Okay, we're live. Recognizing a quorum, the chair opens the August 12th, 2024 meeting of the Community Housing Committee. This meeting is being held in a hybrid model, both in person in the hearing room at Yarmouth Town Hall, 1146 Route 28, and remotely via the virtual computer platform Zoom. Committee members may participate in person or through remote participation pursuant to Chapter 20 of the Acts of the 2021 an act relative to extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency signed into law on June 16, 2021 and extended through March 31, 2025. The information to access this meeting via Zoom was published on the agenda with the town clerk and on the town's website with a minimum 48-hour notice to the public. The public is welcome to attend in person or remotely. This meeting is being recorded. So, first order of business, minutes?
There's none, sorry.
Okay. Second, Affordable Housing Act Housing Bond Bill update.
So last week, as many of you know, the state passed and the governor signed the Affordable Homes Act. And so it's a rather long document. I'm hearing that it's like 200 pages. I've asked town council for the final copy that was signed by the governor. Town council has been reviewing it very carefully because there's some zoning changes. There's some changes to Chapter 40A and Chapter 40B. I shared with you the August 8th advisory from town council, who is Mead, Talaman, and Costa, and Jay Talaman is our point person. And what we've decided on a staff level is to get together as a staff, and we'll have a working group to go over this, and then meet with town council. Building inspectors and the building commissioner are getting questions already, so isn't the town planner. They're sending stuff to me, so basically what's going to have to happen is, staff is going to have to really understand exactly what the act meant so that the town's protected. I don't know if you've had a chance to look at this, but right away, town council has identified seasonal communities, that designation, as an issue for the town.
So, I apologize. That was my main question. If Yarmouth was designated as seasonal.
Yarmouth is not automatically designated.
I thought I saw something that said every town on the Cape in Dukes County, Barnstable County and Dukes County was seasonal.
Not in Nantucket.
No, it says here, certain municipalities in Barnstable County. And how is it, do you know how it was decided
Settled
which?
at what, 30%?
Maybe you said that.
Yeah, so maybe the way that they're going to calculate it, we will count.
We don't know yet.
Some numbers off the internet say we're at 27%.
Could you say 27% of what? So I don't get
25%, 27% of our housing stock is used seasonally.
Okay.
So, but other people have found numbers that bump that up to 30%.
I see.
So it really, we have to read the law and see exactly how they define how to calculate that percentage. There's an alternative way to apply. So Myra had some nice correspondences with Senator Sayre's office about that. And they said the language is in the act. So I've asked town council to give us the act.
Okay.
Now, what's interesting is if you go to page 2 and you go to the second paragraph, to be designated or to maintain that status as a seasonal community, you have to adopt certain zoning ordinances.
Where are you looking on page 2?
Page 2, second paragraph.
Okay.
Seasonal communities must adopt zoning ordinances, etc.
So to permit undersized lots to be used for the creation of attainable year-round housing. And they've actually defined attainable housing as housing that serves households earning between 100 and 200% of the area median income. So that's great. They've legally defined that term.
Correct, yeah.
I like that. And we already have a bylaw that allows, it's called the Affordable Lots Bylaw. You can develop by right a home on one of these undersized lots in town if it serves a household that earns 80% of, or below of the area median income. So we already, I think that would pass town meeting, we'd just tweak that a little bit. And the other thing is that, the other type of zoning is the town would have to allow tiny houses. So we have to look at the definition of what a tiny house is.
And it is defined
It's
in
400
It's
feet or
400
less,
square feet, yeah.
excluding lofts.
So there's these modular units,
Right.
these pod houses that you can just buy prefabricated that can get just plopped down. So we have to be careful about that because sometimes they have whales on them. So, right? And so we have to make, so, the town might say, well, the benefits of getting the designation of a seasonal community, that you have to weigh that against these two requirements. So,
It says 400 square feet or less.
we believe we already allow tiny houses. It must be more than one tiny house on a lot or something. There has to be something else. Because you can already build a house that's 400 square feet.
Some communities, and I can't remember where, have done really tiny houses to house the homeless
Yeah.
within a
She has
development.
a thought.
So what are the next steps of
So,
whether we're adopted as a seasonal community or not? It has to be weighed with the,
I think staff is going to read the act.
yeah.
Meet with, I'm hoping that staff can read the act this week and meet with town council next week. Town council will be, town council represents, I don't know, dozens of other towns. So this is going to be something they're looking into for all of us.
Continuing on this, so it's conceivable we might automatically qualify as a seasonal community.
But it looks like we have to adopt those two zoning ordinances also.
Yes, must, it says, yeah. And did you find out something about Myra, an alternative way to become a seasonal community if?
I guess if the town decides that's where the town wants to go.
Right, of course.
The trust is considering a study that will drill down into that information.
I'm sorry?
The trust is considering a study that will try to get some of that information. There's a list of like qualifications you have to be designated as a seasonal community. And we may be waiting for the results of that study.
Right,
Okay.
so it's like under the Senate language, and of course, this was before the governor signed it, so something might have tweaked. This is from Senator Sayre's office. The state still would have the ability to designate a town as a seasonal community based on a number of factors, such as the high rate of short-term rentals. Right? So it's not just the percentage of units that are used year-round, but how are they seasonally, how are they used seasonally?
So it's still,
A significant seasonal population increase, like does your population double, right? A disparity between median home price and the median income, we've got that. The percentage of housing stock owned as second homes and monthly employment variations.
Hotel rooms don't count. Is that
Yeah, that would have been a good suggestion.
right? But they don't.
No, it's not counted in this calculation.
so there's one thing that will be interesting to learn about all, like it says right here, that all municipalities in Dukes and Nantucket counties and certain municipalities in Barnstable and Berkshire counties are automatically designated as seasonal communities. So I think that means that all such communities must, by have zoning that complies, must adopt these new zoning bylaws, right? They don't have any choice.
Right.
So it could be that Yarmouth might have to adopt them, possibly. We're not quite
Or
sure.
they might say the benefits of being a seasonal community.
Oh, don't outweigh the,
Yeah.
yeah.
No, what I'm saying is towns aren't necessarily allowed to opt out of this, right? You can't just say, I don't want
I
to.
don't know, that's a
You get
good
what I'm
question.
saying?
Yeah. That's a
It
good
says
question.
here that, well, for example, it says all municipalities in Dukes and Nantucket counties are automatically designated as seasonal communities. So I'm thinking, well, they can't opt out because they're automatically designated. I don't know, but that's what it sounds like. Does that make sense to you, or am I?
And we haven't read it. Do you
Okay.
know what I mean?
Right.
That paragraph that town council wrote,
Yeah.
when I first read it, I thought that he was referring just to the communities that would have to apply. So I'll have to look at the act.
Yeah, it's just how I'm reading this,
Yeah.
that if you're
Well,
automatic,
This reads the same as the.
right, we're not sure, but I'm just saying that's how it came across to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then the next thing is there's some language that's changed, some laws that have changed under Chapter 48 about accessory dwelling units. They take effect in 180 days, which is February 2nd, 2025. So there is some opportunity for towns and municipalities to change their bylaws and ordinances. We don't think Yarmouth is going to make that deadline, but basically, ADUs are now allowed by right in the state of Massachusetts. Right now, in Yarmouth, you have to get a special permit from the Zoning Board of Appeals. They can't be linked to, like a family-related situation, but also they can't be used solely for short-term rentals. So that's
So-
good news.
So just, so I want to be clear. So if you're going to do an ADU, it needs to be a year-round rental. That's a good thing. But you can't rent to a family member?
Well, before, we allowed them here in Yarmouth, and a lot of other towns did that, just for a family member.
But we changed that in the most recent passing of the changes, that it could be either or.
Right.
And now the state is saying it can't be?
No town can have that restriction. There's some
It
towns,
wouldn't be, but they can allow it. It can't be
course,
just
yes.
restricted to family, but they can allow family. Correct, okay.
But it can't just only be family?
Correct.
Right, okay.
Correct.
That makes sense.
they can have reasonable regulations, such as, setbacks and design review. But it can't be at the level of a special permit. Like, they're allowed by right. There's a size restriction. It's 50% of the gross area of the principal dwelling unit, or 900 square feet, whichever is smaller. It sounds like you can require one additional parking spot for the ADU in any area that's not within a half mile of a transit hub. We're like, what does a transit mean? What does transit mean? Does it mean Route 28? We don't know.
So an ADU needs to be 900 square feet, but a tiny house only needs to be
No,
400?
it doesn't need to be 900
The
square feet.
biggest it can be is 50.
Okay, Laura, okay.
900 or half the size of the dwelling,
So is
whichever is smaller.
Is the town evaluating what we approved for the ADA, is that the right?
ADUs, yeah. Yep.
ADU, in comparison to what the state, because it sounds like we are meeting some of this.
Some of it we are, and some of it
No.
we're going to have to let go.
And I noticed that you can't require owner occupancy.
Yeah, there's no more,
I think that's the
That's the
biggest
big-
difference, yeah. Which, here's how it struck me. Again, this is just how it strikes me, but that seems okay because you have to, the person has to live there on a long lease. They can't, you can't operate it like a B&B. that's forbidden, I believe, to
Right.
operate it as a short-term rental, which I think is what people are worried about, right?
Well, I think that people are also worried about duplexes.
Duplexes?
So what happens is when with an ADU, an accessory apartment in your property, and without the owner necessarily having to live there, it's basically a duplex.
And that's bad because you're afraid of that, of what?
So, I mean, here's my,
Yeah.
you guys decide what you want in your town.
Yeah.
But my call is that if people bought into a neighborhood that was a single-family neighborhood, they might want to always live in a single-family
Right.
home neighborhood.
We heard about some of that when we had the hearing, and people didn't want too much crowding in the neighborhood, too many cars, it wasn't regulated properly and so forth, so there was a lot of issues around. So it's saying that I can't see where it says that it can't be ownership, or it doesn't have to be ownership, living in the dwelling, or it
It's at the
can't.
bottom of page 2. New legislation also removes municipalities' authority to impose an owner occupancy requirement on an ADU in a single-family residential zone.
Yeah, it's a little ambiguous to me.
Right.
I mean, does it have to be that the owner, can you still require the owner to live in the principal dwelling or something?
Not
I
anymore.
don't get it. But I don't, yeah, okay, that doesn't freak me out. Yeah, I mean, the thing about operating it as a revolving door, every couple of weeks, changing people, I get that freak out totally, yeah.
It might be that people just think that if the owner lives there, the property would be
Yes.
kept up.
Yeah, that's
And maintain.
not as, yeah. I've rented many, many years in places, and I didn't consider myself a scary character because I rented,
Yeah. Matter of fact, I did more for the properties I rented than the owners did.
So it doesn't,
So I'm not clear, it's saying that it can't be owner occupied, or it can't be required to be
Can't
owner
be
occupied?
required.
Okay, but it can be
It
owner
can
occupied.
be owner-occupied.
Can be, we just can't have that requirement anymore.
But I mean, this has the potential to change the complexion of
I
some
get that,
neighborhoods
Yeah,
Yeah,
within the town. I mean,
so you might, like, some places you might see less pressure for that to happen, and others you're gonna see a lot of pressure for that to happen.
yes.
It really depends on, so I'll just take Mashpee for an example, right? Mashpee, a lot of people who bought in Mashpee brought a lot of wealth for them and with them, and they really do want to be in a single-family neighborhood, and
they're not going to build ADUs.
yards are big, and they really like the distance between them. And there's other places where, maybe somebody, has been there at the unit for a while and their income stream has changed. And having a rental property on their compound would make a big difference for them. So you'll see more pressure for that. And I just can't imagine places that, that are more urban, the rents that they can get are just huge.
well, a good portion of Yarmouth is on relatively small lots. And you start adding an ADU and a parking space, and
Is it accurate that a good portion of the property is on small lots?
I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
Is it really?
It is accurate.
Mashpee I don't know if they still do, they used to have 2-acre zoning in
Yeah.
parts of the town.
Yeah.
I mean, those are.
Well, I know in Dennis, some of it was .1.
Yeah,
The
no,
lot
there's,
sizes
we
increasing.
have the highest density.
We do.
Yep, in Yarmouth, we do. We have
Highest
the
density
smallest-
even in
We
com-
just have a ton of small little lots.
Yeah,
Oh,
people per
I didn't
acre.
realize that.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the neighborhoods, you don't really realize it because they're kept up so nicely,
Right.
right? But, they do have like driveways that are really for 2 cars only. Do you know what I mean? Like, it starts to get kind of funky when you add all the cars.
So in other words, those might be the neighborhoods that could benefit by this, income-wise, but it's a neighborhood that might not be able to accommodate?
Oh, no, they'll be able to accommodate it now.
Okay.
A lot of places couldn't come, I mean, people, I've met with people who wanted to put an accessory apartment, and they didn't know, we required 2 parking spots per ADU, and they didn't know how they would fit in 2 parking spots. They just didn't know how to do it.
Here's something I keep forgetting, and then remembering whenever we bring this up, is that when you build something like this, you still have to comply with the wastewater situation. Like, if my lot is allowed a certain number of bedrooms on that lot, right, in order to comply with the human waste release, you can't just start adding new bedrooms on the lot, right, whether it's an ADU or not.
So Yarmouth is a
Upgrading the
flow-neutral
septic
community.
system.
Right.
What does that mean?
Well, it
So
was,
to get the 0% financing and to make ground on our water quality in town, when we went to install sewering, we passed a bylaw saying that we would be flow neutral. So there's going to be a flow allocation regulation that comes about in Yarmouth.
Well, that could prevent you from considering building, you can't just put another bedroom on a lot, right? And another bathroom is what I'm saying, because the ADU has to have its own bathroom. So that would still prevent the construction of an ADU is what I'm thinking, because,
Right.
yeah. I keep forgetting about that when we start talking about
Appointed the
this.
flow czar
Right.
in town. You know, that's something that the town is working on.
but that's all when we have sewerage and.
Right, but
And we
that's,
don't have, we're going to have sewerage in a
coming
very
up,
small,
you know.
small part of the town. And for the other areas where
you know,
I think any updated septic is required to be available for 3 bedrooms.
yeah, I don't know what happens with the areas that are not sewered.
Well, isn't it true that like a lot has an allocation of I think you're allowed a certain number of bedrooms, right? Like if you put in a whole new bedroom and a whole new bathroom, that might not be allowed.
In the
See?
Aquifer Protection District,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
You're limited to the
Yeah.
number of bedrooms
Right.
per the square footage of your lot.
yeah,
I think it's 1 bedroom per 10,000 square feet.
right.
So if you have one of these lots that is 25,000 square feet, you can only have 2 bedrooms. So how do you fit in the ADU?
Yeah, that's a big negative side thing, which would supersede this new.
Yeah.
So it,
That's what I'm thinking anyway.
These are the comments that we
Yeah,
we gave our rep and our senator, and
that's okay. It's all good.
yeah.
Are there also restrictions on how many people can be in a bedroom? Or, because I know when I was in the city, there was certain square footage for the number of people in a bedroom and how much extra space you would need for another person. Is that something that happens in Yarmouth?
Yes. So there's health and safety code for the state, there's health and safety code for the town. They are enforcing that.
So you can't have 5 people in a bedroom.
So home ownership, it's hard to regulate,
Right.
right? How do you regulate that? We have, each rental unit in our town must be registered with the Board of Health, and they inspect. And so if they see evidence that there's too many people there, they will note that in the rental permit.
Right.
I don't know if it's a permit or what, or the rental registration. They will put in there how many, the occupancy limit.
I don't want to get off track, I'm just curious. I was at an inspection with someone from the town,
Yeah.
and they noticed that people had, beds in the living room. And they were like,
Right.
wait a second, how many people are here?
Right.
No, that was an apartment, though, that wasn't a private home, and it was, the Board of Health person was,
There
Kind of taken
is,
aback.
right, there is some control over that, and you know, our health department, you know, every year, right? Their program gets better and better and better and better, and they're able to regulate more and more and more and more and more. And what I'm hearing that for a while they've been looking at number of people in rental units. They can, and they have been. So that impacts flushes.
is there, we have any idea how long it's going to take to review the act itself and to kind of sift down some of these things, whether Yarmouth...
I'm hoping to get to the point where we can have a meeting with town council next week, that staff can get their questions to town council next week. Because people are already asking for advice on this. Developers, property owners, residents are already asking about this. So that's what I'm hoping. I mean, this is a big change. I'm hoping that, you know, was it the MMA comes out with some training on it. Usually what happens is that town councils start looking at this. The town councils kind of start to communicate with the Massachusetts Municipal Association. Is that what MMA stands for? And then they have an attorney, or they'll hire an attorney to do a briefing. And all the town councils will go to it, and town planners, and because you know, it's law, we want to implement it correctly. So this, even with us understanding it all, this will take a while for this to be implemented. Also, what's very interesting is back in the day, subdivisions, you know, happened and they were on smaller lots. And those lots, if they were owned, when we changed the zoning to larger lot zoning, and Myra might know the history a little bit better than I do, when there were two lots that were touching each other, that were owned by the same person, they were merged to one lot. So that's been taken away. That lots that were, you know, created back in the day, they were legally created, they can now exist as separate lots, as long as they have 75 feet of frontage. So that should be interesting. Again, we have an affordable lots bylaw that allowed those lots to be developed. There wasn't a lot of interest, because most people, when they went to these subdivisions, if they bought two lots, they bought them because they wanted a backyard. The lots were so small, they wanted the land around them. So that's the non-conforming lot / merger. There's some stuff about, you know, if you start to appeal stuff, you have to put up bonds. There's a preference for veterans in affordable housing now, so that's...
What?
There's, on page 4, page 5,
Okay.
there's affordable housing for veterans. It talks about up to 10% of the units can be set aside with a veteran preference.
Okay.
And then again, chapter 40B, they talk about tightening up the language for getting appeals processed by the Housing Appeals Committee. And there's money.
There is.
There's lots and lots and lots of money. The bill in total, because this first started as a housing bond bill, a funding mechanism, $5.1 billion. There's 49 policy initiatives. It's $2 billion for repair, rehabilitation, and modernization of the state's public housing portfolio. That is really good news. That's super good news. That's something that the Housing Authority should really pay close attention to.
Say that again, please.
$2 billion for repair, rehabilitation, and modernization of the state's public housing portfolio.
That's right, yeah.
So Housing Authority should really pay careful attention to that.
So at this point, we're at a kind of a wait and see.
We are, and I'm hoping that, there's millions and millions of dollars and stuff. So hopefully that brings on new units. We just have to be careful to apply for everything when it comes available. But we're in good shape to do that.
So next is Soldier on Veteran Housing Model.
Yep, no update.
Okay. And then compliance with the Americans with Disabilities Act and accessibility requirements in housing. I sent out some things that everybody got, I think, and Mary, were you able to get with the Ready Rental people and find out if there is demand or what the demand is?
I'm trying to think. No, I didn't. I forget what I was gonna try to do for that. Oh, I was gonna look at the list. That's what I was gonna do. Yep, I can do that. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah, so, I mean, I don't think we need to spend a lot of time on this today, but I mean, in Massachusetts, it's all going to boil down to probably the Fair Housing Act and the CMR 521, I believe it is, or 521 CMR, which is the accessibility regulations for Massachusetts that's tied directly to the state building code. And in my the Massachusetts Accessibility Code is the most stringent accessibility code that I worked with when I was practicing. There's a lot of areas where it's much more restrictive than ADA is. And we're only dealing with ADA Title II because ADA Title III is for public accommodation. And so we would only be dealing with Title II. And Title II generally talks about parking, lobby, any public spaces within a housing development.
Okay, Title II is public spaces in a housing
Yes.
development.
Yeah.
Okay. This was helpful to me because I'm on the Disability Commission and we were doing a survey of ADA compliance in public buildings in Yarmouth. And this clarifies how that all sorts out. So Title III is the public.
Title II.
Title II is the.
Title III really doesn't come into play.
Okay.
Because Title III is basically office buildings, hotels, any public any building that's open to the public.
Any private building.
Right.
Or public building?
No, public buildings
Like this building, for example.
I think public buildings are exempt of ADA, if I remember correctly. They've got their own, they would have to deal with the state, what the state wants in terms of because in like I said, in the most part, the Massachusetts code is more stringent than ADA is.
Right.
So, so we would be dealing really with, most of the time, now fair housing does come into play, and there's a sheet on page 5 that talks about some differences between fair housing and the state code.
Yep.
That's
And then the state code really talks about two different types of units in terms of housing units. There's type 1 is basically there are some size restrictions in terms of how the maneuvering space that has to be within a bathroom. It doesn't go as far as it does for a fully accessible unit, which is a type 2 unit. And so the basically type 1 units, there are some size restrictions and things that we should be paying attention to, and then they need to be built so that they don't have to be structurally modified to be adapted to help somebody that doesn't need a type 2 unit, but may need grab bars. They may need, for instance, all the doors are 3 feet or 32 inches minimum, that sort of thing. So I think there are things that we should be paying attention to when we're dealing with with unit designs coming in and looking at, because I can't remember where I read this, but it said 11% of people 65 and over require accessibility enhancements, and 45% of people 65 to 79 have household activity limitations. And not surprisingly, 90% of seniors would prefer to age in place rather than, be moving into another unit that can't be adapted to some extent. And then the percentage of Yarmouth residents that are in that 65 plus is 42%. So it's much higher than you're going to run into in a typical community.
Well, the Cape is, in general, has some of the oldest populations,
Yeah.
I think, in the country, actually, Barnstable County. Certainly in the state.
So what I like on page 5, which is the second page in this packet, is it actually has dimensional requirements for things.
Does the Massachusetts code?
Well,
What
it has like, the Fair Housing Act requires a minimum 108 inches vertical clearance.
Well, for instance, in a type 1 unit, according to the Massachusetts code, you need to have 30 by 48 inch clear floor spaces in front of a vanity and at a toilet and things like that. So it does, to some extent, dictate the size of a bathroom within a housing unit, but it doesn't go so far as to require. Type 2 requires the actual 60-inch
Okay.
Turning around for a
diameter for
wheelchair.
wheelchairs and things like
That
that.
also include like a roll-in shower?
Yeah, but not in type 1. Type 2, you're basically, it's all the bells and whistles for turning radiuses and reach ranges and knee
No
clearance.
thresholds at doors?
Right, yeah.
Right.
Gosh, on page 9, home requires all 3. That you meet the 521 CMR.
Yeah, no, this document that I took this stuff from is dated fall of 2006. So I'm not sure whether these agencies are relevant anymore or not, or there may be new agencies that would be needed to be added to the table, but.
But you can see, like, when you use the home money, when you use the federal money, it all applies. You know what I mean? Like, it's, that's good.
Oh, yeah, that's a good chart there.
Right. And so that's when, sometimes we do new programs, we try to comply with the federal programs, because we won't miss anything, because they make you
Well, it's smart, too. I mean,
comply with everything, yeah.
Well, John, I did just learn that the ADA requirements do apply to state and local government facilities.
Oh, okay.
But not federal government buildings, because
Right.
there's an earlier law for federal government.
Okay.
And without your comment, I wouldn't have figured that out. So I got less confused today about it.
I knew it didn't apply to one of them, but I
Yeah,
can't.
right. So that helps me with the Disability Commission, for sure.
So,
Devil's advocate for, like the project we approved, the apartments are on the second floor. None of those can be accessible, correct? Because.
They have an
no
architectural
elevator.
barrier, right? They have stairs.
yeah, there's no elevator.
So if we were to put into our affordable housing standards, just something, the minimum we should put in is something like, we'd like to see, developments where, some of the affordable units are accessible. And then maybe we could describe the different levels, something like
Right,
that.
we talked about this last time a little bit in when we're really pushing mixed-use development. And mixed-use development is going to, for the most part, be, units above retail or commercial space down below. So I don't know if we want to, modify the language of some things to say at a certain size an elevator is required, or accessible units have to be provided on the ground floor at grade level.
There are mechanisms that aren't exactly elevators, where someone in a wheelchair
Right.
can
Oh,
roll in
yeah.
and just
Operates
back there.
along a stairwell,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
That's another possibility, yeah.
Well, the stair lifts, if you're in a wheelchair, that's not going to accommodate a stair
It's not,
lift,
it's
is it?
not a stair lift, it's
No, it's called
it's
a
almost,
lift,
I want to hate
but
to
it's
call it
not
a
a
cage,
yeah.
but it's almost
Okay.
like you kind of
Yes,
go into a
yes, yes.
cage.
The Barnstable County Community Building up in the hill
Yeah,
has that for a
It's not,
wheelchair.
not a fully enclosed
Yeah, yeah,
elevator,
yeah.
right? Yeah.
That's mostly used if it's not a full floor of elevation difference.
Okay.
They're not really meant to be used in lieu of an elevator or something like that. But,
No power, though, that was going to be a problem, too, then you have
Correct.
someone who can't get up or down.
It's like being in the reclining chair that's electric and you can't
I just bought one, biggest
Yeah.
mistake I ever made. I hate it.
lose your power and
Well, I'm
you're
just so
going
used
to
to
be
doing this,
prone
now I gotta
forever.
hit a button and wait for it, and I'm like, what am I doing here?
Yeah, given that I've known
It was
people,
on sale.
elderly people that have had those and
Hopefully
when you have a
tax-free
power
weekend.
failure, you're
No.
in trouble.
I'll take it off your hands cheap. What do you say?
Well, let me see. I keep thinking I'm gonna get used to it, but I'm not getting used to it, but
Yeah,
we'll see.
no.
I'll let you know, though, you'll be first on my
All right,
list.
thank you.
So I think for right now, maybe we can just table this but it would be good to know what the demand is from,
Okay.
from renters that are,
I do like this information. It is helpful to me, yeah.
I think it's really important, too, that we know this moving forward, because you just mentioned some stats that are gonna be important, and
Yeah,
I think those stats are just gonna climb. So
right. I don't think the population on the Cape is going to get any younger
Not
soon.
anytime soon.
No, because if the younger people leaving,
Not this part of the population, anyway.
Yeah, I know that 811 Route 28, if they had read in our affordable housing standards that we want some accessible units, the architect would have made one of those units, just a one-floor living
Right.
space. That would have happened. That would have been easy. But now that it's all designed, it's gone too far. Those plans are done.
so we need to think about going forward, how and what we want to tie in.
Yeah.
Because given we know we have an aging population, and given that we know that, we can't say that people don't apply, because they might not apply because they know that it's not going to work for them.
Yeah, that's what we were talking about last meeting was,
Right.
So I think, so we're doing a lottery right now for a building that has 2 accessible units.
Is it?
And they were advertised as accessible.
Okay,
So that might be a realistic lottery data
People
to
come out
look
of the
at.
woodwork knowing there were accessible units.
I won't know that till the end, because there's an accessibility preference for one of the units. So there's not, right now, they've received 50 applications. The application is due in 2 weeks, so we just did another social media.
you released that today. You released that email today, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You have 50 applications for 2 units?
For
For
6.
6 units, okay. And what's been the time frame for the applications have been?
The marketing period is a minimum of 60 days.
So 60 days, 50 applications?
It's 45 days. And you get some at the beginning right away, and at the end, when the deadline
Yeah,
comes.
exactly.
um,
You have people that can't wait to sign
Right.
up, and then you got people who wait till
the last
deadline,
minute.
and then
So
they-
we're hoping for another 50 to come in, and that would give us something to work with.
So everybody post the poster.
Right, right. No, like ordinarily, when a development, that's not being done under Chapter 40B or anything, isn't there a number where it hits and they have to give a,
It's
They have to-
20 units for
20 units.
the Massachusetts Accessibility Code. But fair housing, it's 4 units, but I'm not real clear on how that works. I need to do some more digging on that.
so when,
And we do, I'm still a little bit at a loss for how fair housing and the Massachusetts 521 CMR, how they interlock. Because fair housing is asking 4 units or more, but my understanding is fair housing covers virtually all types of housing development too, so.
right. And so anyways, I put the word out to the county and to Drew, because I know he sits on the Disability Commission.
Right.
Just to put the word out, there are people that work on this stuff professionally, so maybe we could get a guest speaker. So Beth Albert from the county, she's just retired, but that was one of her big things.
Beth Albert,
Yeah,
she's retired. I heard today that she was going to retire.
Okay. so she's retiring.
I would be very interested in that guest speaker.
Yeah, yeah. So that's how I
That
first
can-
learned about accessibility issues,
Help us
was
out.
through Beth, when she was the director over at Humans.
The Human Services,
One of-
Barnstable County Department of Human Services, yeah.
I knew much more about ADA when I was in practice. My office did nothing but hotel work. And I lost my train of thought. Where was I going with this?
We're looking for a good source for guest speakers.
Pardon?
Yeah, we're looking for sources of guest speakers.
Court, is there
Oh,
anybody at
what I
court?
was going to say was that one of the problems is that there's no agency that really governs this accessibility. It's a civil rights law.
That's
So
Yeah.
building inspectors, for instance, don't review for accessibility. So, and the only recourse that a lot of people have is to sue a developer because they're not providing accessible accommodations.
Well, I go to an inn that's on the Little Bay, and they have one room that they say is for the disabled, and it has lots of clearance space in the bathroom, but you had to get into a tub to take a shower. So how accessible is that? I mean, I when I stay in a regular room, I keep saying, can you put grip bars on the outside of the shower? Because I won't get into the shower in the tub without any grip bars. And I know the Formica tubs, it's hard to do that inside, but you can always put one on the outside so you can get in and out safely. So I couldn't understand how they could consider that room a room that services the disabled if you have to
Well,
get
yeah,
into a
it's
tub.
probably just that it's like, how old is the inn?
Pretty old.
Yeah, it probably has some grandfathered laws where they can call it.
Maybe, but you could
disabled
just
to a certain
easily get rid of
point,
that
yeah,
tub
yeah.
and just
Well,
have a
yeah.
walk-in shower, you roll in shower.
ADA was passed in 1990,
Right.
and so that's, 34 years ago? And they did put some limitations on hotels, because hotels, for the most part, renovate every 7 years or thereabouts. And so their thinking was they weren't going to really put too much pressure on them right away, because within 7 years, everybody should be in compliance, but that never happened. And so there's still hotels out there that.
Just to backtrack real quick, John, when you said a new development, every 20 units requires 1 unit to be fully accessible. Is that fully accessible?
It's
Under the
20
town
unit,
or-
well, 20 units or more, and it's, at that point, it's 5% or a minimum of 1 unit. Or, but once you trigger, you know, if you're doing 80 units or whatever, it's basically 5% of 80 units.
That unit that needs to be accessible needs to be fully accessible with the roll-in shower.
Yes.
The 5% does, and then and then all of the other units need to comply with what is essentially type 1, which is the ability to be adapted to provide an enhanced sense of accessibility.
Well, I sure raised up a storm when I brought this up.
No,
Remember
it's
we-
good.
Yeah,
It's important.
Because
I think it is too.
you're right on the money, because you noticed it right away. All those lovely units are on the second floor,
Yeah.
you know, and,
Well, we did have, I can't remember, the woman who said that they were gonna see if they could do a lift.
right, she said up to a lift, and, you
Have
know,
we heard any further if that's gonna happen, or if they're still,
so it's a funny thing, right? Because you select the tenant through a lottery,
right?
right? So a lot of the affordable, so the affordable housing world, right? They don't make those accessible improvements until they know the person going into the unit needs that. You know what I mean? So it's like a weird
But if
thing.
you could have a separate list of people that need a fully accessible unit, and when one becomes available, then that lottery pick comes out of that pool of people.
Right, so we have one of those in Falmouth, Brick Kiln, has one accessible unit, and, right, it's supposed to be filled by an accessible household. So the initial lottery, it was difficult to find somebody to fill that accessible unit.
Did you have to leave it empty until you found somebody? Because that's kind of a waste too. You've got an empty unit. That
It
somebody
was
could
the
use.
unit that was empty the longest.
We had a building,
It was just
Yeah.
difficult to,
11-story building, 22 units on each floor. So 1 unit on each floor was fully accessible. Rent, you know. no,
So the
we didn't-
building
we-
had an
we-
elevator.
Yeah, and we had no need for accessible units till we filled the building. And then someone needed it, and we were like, okay, what do we do now?
right,
And the person who moved in, he was like, I'm not leaving. So-
right, right. So, lot to think about.
Well, if you're looking for a speaker, I suggested you might see if there's anybody at Cord.
That's a good idea.
Okay,
I know, I have good contacts at Cord from the Disability Commission. I'll ask. I won't
Right.
forget.
yeah, because
I'll
it's
ask
kind
it,
of, because,
yeah.
you know, when we first start this stuff in Yarmouth, I'll tell you, you know, it's mostly encouragement, right?
Yeah.
So we're looking for somebody to come and tell us, how do we encourage these units come
Right.
online?
Yeah.
Are there any grants? Are we going to have to rely on only the affordable units being accessible? Is the Affordable Housing Trust going to have to step up to add, you know, cover that extra cost? That kind of stuff.
Well, there's a woman called Jessica Simmons, who's a Yarmouth resident who works for Cord, and she's on the Disability Commission. So that's a person we could ask about that, what
Yeah.
Cord might have to offer along those lines, yeah.
We're looking for the right words, right, which John's already started.
Yeah.
But also, you know, the best practices to get these units online.
I know that Community Actions Shelter, Family Shelter, they had, it's an old converted motel, and they had a house on the property that Hack owns the property, Housing Assistance Corporation. And they had one house that was rented separately, which I never quite figured out. And once Hack gave it up as a rental, they completely converted that to be completely handicapped accessible, including an induction stove with the right dish pans and everything completely handicapped. I I don't work on those grants anymore when they were applying for funding for that, so I don't know what's happened in being able to fill that unit. But the whole house is completely handicapped accessible. Handicapped compliant, I guess is the word.
Yeah,
Is that the word, compliant?
it is sometimes, yeah.
Well, yeah, the demand thing will be interesting, and it'll be interesting whether it's not there because it's not needed, or it's not there because people just assume they're not going to be able to get into an accessible unit.
Okay.
So, next item, Community Preservation Committee application?
Yep. So I drafted up an application. It's in your packet. So so the trust meets tomorrow, so they'll take a look at this. The application is due in September 20th. So I figured I'd give it to you now to look at. Now, I don't know if you're familiar with this cover sheet, but it has, the total program cost and your CPA funding cost. So what I'm going to be recommending to the trust is that they submit an application for $622,000 of community preservation money. The total project is $1.7 million. And the reason why that's bumped up so high is we're going to go for a big block grant from the state for next year. So that's where that comes from. So this falls under community housing. And, a lot of this is from past years. The project summary talks a little bit about what's the objective of the Affordable Housing Trust. It's basically to create and preserve affordable housing. The project summary, we have a need, we have an inadequate supply of housing that is safe, decent, and affordable to our low and moderate income households. And that the trust is the key funding mechanism for our affordable housing program. So while we might get other sources, the state might come in and help us, even the federal government might come in and help us. It's really the trust that's been the driver, because once you get that local commitment of hard cash, not financing, but hard cash, these other programs start to pay attention. So in the project summary, that's the first paragraph. The second paragraph talks about what criteria we're meeting for the community preservation program. And then the next paragraph is the goals. I don't know if anybody had any questions about that.
My question is there enough funding in the Community Preservation Committee to fund that amount, given that a large amount of the money has been committed to, is it recreation? And the bonding issue, so that's a big question, but.
Yeah. The community benefit is creating and preserving high-quality, affordable housing. And, there's some basic things that our affordable units serve, how they serve Yarmouth. And it's safe and decent housing, a stable workforce that can live locally. They find that households that live in affordable housing have more cash for healthier food, so they're healthier. Households with students in them do better when they don't have to move a lot. We've used affordable housing to redevelop blighted properties, and those construction projects brought in work to the town. So we don't do anything with anything that we don't control the site, right? We're either buying something to control the site or working on something we already control. We don't ask for any waivers from permitting. We have a great team. The Affordable Housing Trust has a lot of experience, has a current town administrator, a former town administrator, a select person, Mark Forrest, who was also, an aide to U.S. Senator. Debbie Clark's been involved in the town for years, and Myra Sahenich, who's a member of this committee, has a wealth of municipal experience, including community preservation work. And I've been here for 17 years working on affordable housing. Been here a little bit longer, but working 17 years with affordable.
So are these cost estimates tied to specific projects?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
So,
Sorry, say that question again?
If these cost estimates on page 6 are tied to specific projects?
so that's the budget, right?
No.
That's our budget.
I didn't
So-
know if they were, everything was identified that the money would be spent on, or whether,
So if the trust has programmed out $2 million for this fiscal year, so if we spend all of that money, we're not going to have much left.
Is that clear in here? Because I remember being at your last meeting, and I think it's the first time I've ever been to that meeting where that was discussed and how the trust was spending down the funds that they had.
So you think I should,
Yes.
okay.
Yes.
All right, I'll
I
add
think that should be clear in this because
Yeah,
they might think that this request is extravagant and they think they
Okay.
need to understand that.
okay. All right, I can add that. So yeah, we're basically gonna be very shallow on what we can do if we do spend all the money in this fiscal year. So what we're asking for, what I'm recommending is $250,000 to create new housing. And that's usually enough to get people's attention. Should be really 500,000, but we'll see what the trust says. Number 2 is we're working on several septic repairs, and that's through our community development block grant. So that's where the $60,000 comes from. Number 3 is the $900,000 grant we're going to ask for from the state to do repair work for housing.
When you have acronyms beside those, are you explaining that somewhere?
So it's down below.
And
Is
then
it-
another table, other funding?
Yeah,
Okay, thank you.
and that's their form.
Okay, okay.
Um,
Just wanted to make sure nothing's changed in the forms. And, oh, you said you got this at the meeting, so you know
yeah.
this is the
So
current
So
form.
the 60,000 has one asterisk, so you go down to below.
I see that now,
It's-
thank you.
Yeah, the 9, and I have to add, it's septic connections. That's the other thing we can do under 3. Neighborhoods that get sewered, there might be some people that need money, some assistance
Hook up, yeah.
hooking up. The next one is $300,000 for housing preservation acquisition buy down. We have a series of older units that have weak deed riders, and when they come up for resale, they need some help from the town to keep them affordable. So that's what we've budgeted out, that $300,000. And then we'll get a little bit of money, we'll get $50,000 from CDBG and $60,000 from the state for those. Then the next one is my salary, and then program income. So it adds up real quick. It adds up real quick. So,
So, my understanding is you're asking this committee to approve the application, because you have that in there.
Yep.
So does that require a vote?
yeah. Any motion?
Now I'm trying to figure out how to word it. I move that we approve,
I think they want a letter of recommendation. So you would recommend, your motion would be to recommend approval.
As written?
You
I mean,
could
as
do-
presented?
Well, you were going to make one correction to this.
Right, it wouldn't be as written, it would be,
I would just say approval of the application.
okay.
Correct, yes.
yeah, I move that this committee approves the application that we've been discussing.
Second that motion.
Okay. Take a vote. Drew?
Yes.
Myra?
Aye.
Lee, aye.
Aye.
John, aye.
Do we have any members that are in Zoom?
On Zoom?
No.
I don't
Okay,
think
so
so.
we can just do regular votes.
And we have a quorum.
And you have a quorum.
Yep. So we've got a couple other things that you sent out, Mary. The Harwich Affordable Housing Tax Exemption and the Provincetown.
Yep, so Mark Forrest sent us the Harwich Affordable Housing Tax Exemption, and I think, Myra, you sent us the article about Provincetown, and I think that's the lease to locals
Right, right.
program.
Very interesting, yeah.
So the trust is meeting tomorrow, that's on their agenda.
Okay. I found the Provincetown very interesting, but
Yeah.
my concern was that there's not automatically any funding for the second year.
Right.
So that was a serious concern because,
Two very different approaches from the two towns.
Right.
okay,
Very interesting.
In Provincetown, I didn't understand whether, when they get the grant from the town, is that a one-time grant, or is that something that annually, it's just a one-time grant? Because they weren't getting, it doesn't sound like they were getting a lot of repeat landlords that wanted to do this if they weren't getting the,
So, when Mackenzie Perry spoke to us about that.
Yep.
She said that, is it Placemate, right?
Yes.
The app or the organization that runs this for Nantucket and Provincetown said that once they establish a tenant, right, with that bonus, that first bonus,
Yep.
that typically the majority of those tenants stay in place. Everything's set up, everything's going smoothly, you know, and these are people that want to lease to locals, right? So they say that it usually everything just stays in place. Not every single one, but the majority.
but that's not what, in some of this, it talks about how without that additional funding, some of the renters, the owners would not be able to continue with the program. So that's how to keep that going, and if there are additional funds that they could use, or some way to subsidize the rentals.
Well, it might be interesting if you do a combination of the two,
Right.
right? Like you wouldn't get a tax,
The amount comes down each year a little bit gradually.
or you would get the tax exemption after a year, something like that.
right?
You know, because those tax exemptions, they take a while to kick in,
Right.
so maybe that's how to do it.
I have a friend who volunteers in the library in her town on the Cape and gets a discount on her taxes.
Is that a tax work-off?
Is that what it's called?
I think so, yeah, yeah.
Sounds like it.
So are you all, like, in general, you know, in favor of this, if the, you know, trust goes forward with this and, you know, actually,
What you just said
yeah,
sounds like a really good idea. You know, you
Yeah.
start with
Combining the two.
incentive,
Right.
and then you kick in the exemptions.
in out years, your incentive is the tax relief,
Okay.
I think that's
That's
really
kind
a
of a
great idea.
neat thing, yeah.
yeah. And then you'd be able to control how many tax exemptions you get, because you're kicking it off with a subsidy.
And it seems like most of the renters that they were getting in Provincetown are long-term residents. You know, and I guess, if you were thinking about renting and you find a tenant that is very, a good tenant, that certainly
You don't
goes a
want to get rid
long
of
way
that,
to,
yeah. You want to keep a good tenant if you
yeah,
have a good
exactly,
tenant.
exactly.
Bad tenants are expensive.
In Massachusetts, yeah, yeah. Yeah, that could be interesting, combining the two of them.
Yeah.
Now, is Mackenzie Perry on that committee?
She works for the
She's
town.
the deputy
yeah,
housing
she works for-
director of
Right.
Provincetown, yeah.
But she has come and presented this, but she's not on this committee, is that
Yes, she
correct?
is.
She is, okay.
Yep.
Well, I think they've done, according to this, they've done a good job in selecting tenants that are invested in the community.
Yeah, and I think they hire Placemate to do that.
Right.
And so there's that
There's
arm's
a vetting,
length,
yeah, there's a vetting process, I would imagine.
and it's an arm's length, so it's not like, nobody would be coming in to Mary Wagon's office. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It wouldn't be, it wouldn't be
That's you.
somebody's cousin that I know. It would be, you know,
And
and
the objective evaluation.
you know, and that's,
Right.
that's why we use, you know, one of the several reasons why it's nice to have Plymouth Redevelopment Authority doing our lotteries.
Yeah.
Because it's like, I might help people make an application, but Plymouth Redevelopment Authority looks at them and reviews them. And so it's worked out nice, so that might be an option. I think we're on the home consortium.
Yeah.
I put together some notes, but I'm not gonna read all of this to you. The highlights of the meeting were that, the consortium funds are pretty much depleted at this point. They had, $907,000 dollars and change, or they're down to $7,000 and change. They usually would get more funds July 1st, but those have been delayed until later in August due to the BAPA. Are you all familiar with BAPA? Buy American, Build American. So that if you're going to build something and you're going to use federal money, you've got to buy American products. So they're trying to figure out how to work around that. So it may add costs to things. So it's a little bit complicated. Probably have some more information. Actually, the next meeting is this Thursday, so we probably won't have too much more information. But so I mean, it's a good idea to
How
help.
about that BABA thing?
either.
You hadn't heard about that? Yeah.
They've
I
always
remember
had
reading something about it a
steel.
year ago. So I mean, it's a good idea to help American industry, but if it's gonna make things more expensive and if it's gonna slow down housing issues, then, you know, anyway, it is what it is. So, probably in September, there'll be a little bit more information about that. So that if you are going to build something and it's involves federal money or some housing situation, there are going to be some regulations that you need to. So funding should come in late August, but they need to figure out how they're going to work. Developers need to know how this is going to work, things like that. So, and I brushed up on it. I'm sure I'll get some more information. There was also Barrett Planning Group. They are giving us information. Mary, are you aware of their shared regional housing services? Okay, you are. Is it a good thing?
Yes, yeah, so it's up to each municipality in the county get 30 hours free from Barrett Planning.
The woman who does the
this year.
presentations is awesome.
Yeah.
I don't remember her name off the top of my head.
Yeah.
So do we use those 30 hours?
So
Or?
I've just been designated as the official representative.
That's what I thought, okay. That's what I thought.
And, which is great, and we have 3 ideas.
Okay.
One is to apply have them help us with our application for the state's CDBG money. The second one is help us get our designation as a seasonal community, right? And the third one would be to help with our local comprehensive plan chapter. So we've got 3 really good ideas for that.
I had a feeling you would be the person, the point person involved in this. A question I have, and I didn't ask it in the meeting, I wanted to ask you. So you have these 30 hours. If you don't use them in 1 month, say you use only 24, do those 6 other hours go into the next month, so you now have 36 hours, or is it a use it, lose it?
Yes, and it's on an annual basis, but what they've recommended is for us to get our requests in ASAP so they can schedule,
Makes sense.
right?
So it's
that
not 30 hours a month, it's 30 hours annually.
30 hours a year, and I think it's,
Oh, I thought it was 30 hours a month. I thought she said monthly. No, okay.
oh,
right,
no. I think we get 2 free hours
All right.
a month or something like
Okay.
that. But then,
I was
yeah,
gonna say 30 hours a month for 15 different towns. That's a lot of time, right? Yeah,
right.
okay.
So you really need to give them a 30-hour project to work on, and then they'll work on it, because they need to draft stuff and send it to you and look.
All I know is a lot of the research I've done, their name is on a lot of
Yeah,
work that they've done in the islands and so forth.
right.
The last thing I wanted to mention about the Home Consortium is it was brought up that the Cape View Way project in Bourne, which I worked on, is 50% complete, so I'm very,
Wow.
I'll take a bow.
How many units, do you remember?
So Drew, we talked about this, it was originally 54,
Yeah.
but there was a lot of pushback, there wasn't enough space for fire trucks to get in, parking,
Oh,
things
yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
Not enough buffer area, so they toned it down to 42, so.
Yeah, 42 is
42
reasonable.
is better than 0, so.
It's a lot better than 0.
There was a lot of pushback, but they were able to get it, we were able to get it through.
Good.
I know that, we only have $7,000 left. I'm like, yes, they spent $900,000.
Oh, yeah, that's the other
I'm
part
like,
of it, right.
yes.
They used the money.
There's some years.
The point of it isn't to have a fat bank account, it's to use the money in a productive way, right?
Right.
My concern though is that now it's depleted and.
Yeah, so you got work to do
I'd
now
like
to
to have a
get
little
more.
bit of money in the bank,
Right.
you never know what's gonna pop up.
All right.
Okay, Yarmouth Housing Authority.
Well, the Select Board had invited the Housing Authority to appear before them, to give them an update, and the decided to write them a letter explaining what we were doing, and that letter is included. And that's everything right there. But it's outdated. Especially our executive director, Wendy Olson, has been in contact with EOHLC, who are, and the director of public housing of that agency. And he knows about this proposed project. He's familiar with he's been here to see the land and all that stuff. And he recommends that we send him or them, his office, the request for proposals, and he'll look at it and see what he thinks about it and give us his wisdom on that. And if he thinks it's a decent idea, we will then approve it and put it out for developers to respond to. And at the end of that process, if a developer does respond and is interested, we would then ask the EOHLC to release the lien they have on the land, because they had a long time ago spent a little money on that. And so that's the point of the lien. And I assume that they would, because they'd be on board with the idea. And the request for proposals, the draft of the request for proposals has been shared out. I don't know if you guys want to are interested in looking at it, what it is.
I'd
Yeah.
like to see it.
Yeah,
That'd be-
I could send it out to you like an email in an email. And I don't think it'll be changed in any substantive way, but you'll see it isn't quite in final form, but, so that's where that is. And,
So, just to clarify, the draft is going to
OHLC, which used to be
EOHLC,
that other
to this
name.
particular person, and they're going to review it.
That person is what they call the director. These are all new titles, I think,
Right.
now that they've reorganized. So now he's called the Director of Public Housing. So he's the boss of this kind of thing.
Call his name, Drew?
Ben Stone,
Okay, that-
young man, I believe, yeah. And I think there's a good chance that we'll see how it goes, yeah. we'll see.
And
how
they
it goes.
they have a lease on this land?
No.
Lien.
Yeah, like quite a while ago, they signed a contract for financial assistance with the YHA and spent some money on an earlier iteration of this. And so that causes there to be a lien on the land, but I don't,
Lien on the
yeah,
land.
right.
It's not insignificant, it's over $200,000.
Yeah,
And it was the cost of the architectural plans
yeah.
for, I think it was a 508 development or a 502 development. So HUD had this program, and they went to apply for these HUD funds, and they got this technical loan from the state, which
That's
they're
right.
calling Contract for Financial Assistance, CFA.
Right.
And so what usually happens is you hire the architect, you get the plans in, you send them into HUD, HUD funds your project, and as part of that financial piece, the state is paid back that technical
That's right.
loan.
Yeah,
The HUD program stopped. And so the program never got funded, so that lien for
Still
the
sitting
design
there.
work is still on the land.
But there's communication between the state and us, the housing authority, about how the sequence to make all this happen
Right.
is what the point of this
Oh.
all is, yeah.
And you meet later this week.
Tomorrow. It's a public meeting. Just like this one.
Affordable Housing Trust.
Yep, so the trust meets tomorrow. The agenda, like I told you, has on it the lease to locals and the tax exemption for year-round rentals. It also has the CPA application. The town, the Community Preservation Committee funded a home repair program through Hetch. And that needs a little bit of gap funding, so that's on the agenda. If I've got all my work done, they'll get a report on the Ready Renter Program, annual report and fees. That's a program that's supposed to make money, so we'll see if it did. And then also on the agenda is the short-term rental study that Myra referenced. There's a whole list. We're working on 5 addresses to preserve the affordability of units.
I hope one of them is Plymouth Road.
Yes, one is 19 Plymouth Road. So 19 Plymouth Road had a mass health lien on it.
Right,
So town council has worked with the state.
Good.
They're going to release that lien. There's a tax lien on it that was bought by somebody. So town council has worked out a plan with them. So now we're ready to have the heirs of the people that used to own the house, the parents that used to own the house. There's an offspring who now has to apply to the state to sell the property. So that's where we're at.
Planning Board?
I don't have any update except to say that they're going to be very busy updating the zoning bylaw to comply with the Affordable Homes Act.
Do we have a planning board representative on this committee?
Mhm.
And,
So the representative is Jim Saban.
Jim who?
Jim
Yeah.
Saban.
my point, exactly.
Oh, okay.
Jim.
Is he staying on the committee?
I could check. I think they reorganized and he is still the appointed.
Okay.
You might want to recheck that, because I'm not sure he
Yeah,
may-
I
he may
received-
be retiring from
Yeah,
such
I heard
things.
something to that effect.
That could be. That's a possibility.
Right. I think they reorganize in beginning of the fiscal year. So let me see.
The state and local fiscal years are different, correct? Or HUD's fiscal year is,
Federal's different.
federal's different. That's why I was so surprised not to have the grant due in September, because that's the end of their fiscal year. And that's what they always have done, the HUD continuing care application.
I'll have to.
Did we do community preservation?
No, we didn't,
Okay.
but I'm the representative, and the RFP has been released, and they have the deadline, and
September
It'll be-
20th.
September 20th, okay?
Yes.
And they'll be reviewing the applications, and when they all come in and the committee meets, I'll be on vacation. I'll be out of the country for a week.
For you.
So, yeah, I'm very excited about it, but the timing is weird. So when I come back, if they have everything ready, I'm not taking any work with me. I'm not going to do that. But if they have copies of the applications, I'll get that packet.
They usually put that online?
I don't know.
The
The
applications?
applications, I don't think so.
No, they get them electronically.
Yeah, but they do have public hearings. They have
No,
hearings.
I know that, but I just
Is it-
wondered, other towns do put the applications on.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah. I don't think that the Community Preservation Committee does that, but that's a question for Don Marie.
Because it's, always interesting to see.
And then they bring in the applicants and they do an interview with them and the committee asks questions and so forth. So I'm going to miss some of that process. I don't know where they'll be by when I come back on October 10th. But
Well, maybe some of us can watch it and just, kind of get a feeling for it.
yeah,
They're great meetings. They really are. It's a packed room. That's the only thing, if they're in room A.
right.
And the committee, I think, is 9 members?
I
I think it's larger than this committee.
There are one or two absent people.
And so they fill that whole table. So then everybody has to sit in that, and it's packed, but they're really great. I'm sorry, I'm going to say it out loud. They're fun projects.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's a
And it's
fun
a-
committee. It's a fun, because it's,
I tried to go to one once, and my Zoom wasn't working at all. And but I want to try it again.
It is a hybrid for the most part, yeah. It should be a hybrid.
and it's truly comprehensive, right?
It's a way of really evaluating if the project is ready, and some of that happens before they even come to the table. But because we had one project last year where we met with this person 2 or 3 times, and it really wasn't ready. And the person kept wanting it to be, and it wasn't, so that person's gone in another direction. It's all probably public record, but I'm not gonna say much more about it. And then there was another one, the housing one, the person didn't have the nonprofit status.
Right, great idea. There's a
Right.
great idea. But, yeah, they.
That wasn't ready. I don't know if that's
They
something
didn't
that,
have what really was the problem with that is they wanted me to find the site for that. And I'm like, I can't find enough sites for our stuff,
What was
so.
the idea?
The idea is a group home. We haven't done one of those in a while, and it's kind of like Forward did.
well, we funded the second stage of Forward.
Yeah.
That was funded. Forward is for people with mostly
Autism.
autism and Asperger's, but I think it branches a little bit, and it's been highly successful.
Right.
They came in under budget or within budget for their first project and on time and everything, and then last year we awarded them funds for phase 2.
We can and we have funded brick and mortar, like real property for group homes in the town. You really need that nonprofit partner who's gonna run it for you, right? So this nonprofit that we're talking about is still in its development.
Right, and it wasn't ready for
It wasn't
prime time
ready.
at all.
Um,
And
and a lo-
project, I'm sorry,
And a lot of the nonprofits that we have funded, when that key staff person kind of moves on from doing that piece, that piece of the project, that piece of the agency's work just kind of falls. So once in a while, they'll get a property manager that will work at a nonprofit. They're like, yeah, let's go buy some, and we'll house our clients. But then they retire, and then who's going to run it afterwards?
Right.
So
but Project Forward is actually in Dennis, and it's a cooperative
I've heard of it.
funding.
I
Yeah.
don't know where I heard it, but I remember when you said Forward, I was like, well, I know what that is.
Yeah.
And it's one of those projects that other towns, including the town of Dennis, have come pulled together funds to create these projects.
And then,
Community development?
no update.
Okay. Anything else? Anyone? All right, next meeting is September 9th at 3 o'clock, so,
Make it, I will be late.
okay. So the meeting's adjourned.
Oh, who made the motion?
Move we adjourn this meeting.
I second it.
Oh. He beat me.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I
Folks, I gotta run.